From time to time, I want to talk to you guys about stories that I've seen selling businesses. I've seen some very unique things happen in my almost 25 years of selling businesses. This is one of the worst stories that I can tell. I couldn't believe this. This happened years ago. So the day before closing, I had the business under contract. We had prepared. We're ready to close on the business. The day before the closing, I called up the seller, called up the buyer. I confirmed that what time the closing was going to take place, the location of the closing. I was congratulating them. And then the next day, I get to the closing table 15 minutes early. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to the attorney, and we're just chatting. And all of a sudden, we look at our watches. And it was a half an hour after we were supposed to start closing, and neither the buyer nor the seller were there. I started calling up the buyer, started calling up the seller. Nobody's answering their phone. Nobody's calling me back. Me and the attorney are like, what the heck is going on? I was so confused. And about an hour later, the buyer calls me up and goes, Jim, I'm so sorry that I didn't call you earlier. But I was driving in to the closing, and I said, I'm just gonna drive by the business before I go to closing. And the buyer drove by the business and saw in the parking lot that the seller had rented a U-Haul truck and was taking equipment out of the business and loading it on a truck. He was gonna steal the equipment. Can you believe that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I can't believe, what do you want to do? How do you want to direct this? What do you want to do? She goes, Jim, I want all that equipment off that truck back into the business. I want to do a walkthrough, make sure all that equipment is there. And I also, and this is the only way I'm going to close, is I want 20% off the sales price of the business. And you know what? I was surprised that she even wanted to go forward with the sale of the business. I couldn't believe that she even wanted to go forward. A seller being like that, trying to steal stuff. Basically, at the end of the day, stealing equipment that he's supposed to be selling to the buyer. So I call up the seller, and I'm just gonna use a fictitious name. I go, Dan, what is going on? And he goes, no, right, I'm unloading the truck right now. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I'm unloading all the equipment, I'm putting it back in there. You know, everything's gonna be replaced. And I go, okay, great, but I'm gonna tell you, you not only need to do that, but the seller wants 20% taken off the sales price of the business. And he goes, no, I'm not doing that, I'm like, that's the only way you're gonna be able to sell your business to her at this point, unless you start the whole process over again, and I don't wanna be involved in that transaction if you do. And he goes, I'm not gonna do that. Then he suggested that I take that out of my commission, the difference out of my commission, not that I charge that much, but he wanted me to take a big hit on my commission. I'm like, I'm not gonna take a hit on my commission because you're trying to steal equipment, because you're doing something illegal, because you're doing something unethical. And he goes, well, I'm gonna tell you what, if you don't do that, and I do close on this business, I'm never gonna use your services again. I go, you know what? I would never want to work with you again. I don't wanna work with somebody that's as unethical as you are. And he hung up the phone. And about 30 seconds later, he called me back and he goes, okay, Jim, I'll take 20% less. And we closed on that business.